Hello, my name is Randall Sokoloff, and I am a psychotherapist, a writer, and an artist. I wanted to speak today about something that I notice seems to be becoming quite an epidemic in our culture today. Um, I don't know how it was 50 years ago or 100 years ago. Maybe it was the same way, but I suspect that that's not true. I suspect that this issue has grown more severe over time. And that epidemic is something called emotional reactivity. The majority of psychological and physiological duress that I see people suffering from in my own work with individuals is a result of emotional reactivity. And by what I mean by emotional reactivity is that we all, to a certain degree, have nervous systems that seem to be dysregulated. They seem to be out of balance. And that may be because of our childhood experiences that our nervous systems became dysregulated. It may be because of our exposure to the media on a daily basis. It might be because of various things and traumas that happen to us in our lives, in our adult lives. It might be because of all of those things, traumas, childhood experiences, and exposure to violence and stressful situations in the media on a daily basis. Um, and then on and on and on. But for whatever reason, what I notice is that as human beings in 2015, we are really afflicted by an immense degree of emotional reactivity. Our nervous systems are not existing in a state of equanimity, balance. And by our nervous systems being dysregulated, what I mean is that the sympathetic nervous system, which is the part of our nervous system that has to do with the stress response, whenever we perceive a stress or a threat, our sympathetic nervous system is what takes off. And so our heart rate goes up, our blood pressure goes up, blood flow gets cut off to certain areas of our body and goes to the areas where blood is needed most in order to survive. It's the fight-flight response. The parasympathetic nervous system is the part of our nervous system that reduces stress, brings down heart rate, lowers blood pressure, distributes blood more evenly. So today, most of us have nervous systems that are completely out of balance. Our sympathetic nervous system is up here, our parasympathetic nervous system is down here, and we exist in this state for the most part. It seems to only take very little for us to get triggered and for our nervous system to go into a state of dysregulation. So mental health, psychological well-being, and physiological well-being, I think, is greatly determined by the degree to which our nervous system exists in a state of equanimity. And emotional reactivity is basically the habitual response that we have towards various stressors, whether those stressors are our husband and our wife asking us to do something, or somebody cutting us off on the road, or a parent behaving in a way that we don't like, or some kind of accident or some kind of difficulty, whatever the case may be. Whenever we perceive a threat, whenever we become triggered, it seems like in our culture today that our nervous systems immediately go into a state of dysregulation. Now, in my own practice, my own personal work has really been to learn how to regulate my nervous system because of experiences that I've had in the past. I spent several decades, I would say, with a nervous system that was in a complete state of dysregulation, and I depended upon alcohol and Paxil mainly to bring my nervous system into a state of regulation. And even though these things were helpful in the short term, it was kind of a short-term gain for long-term pain situation. Alcohol and psychiatric medication is really never the answer. It's just short-term gain for long-term pain. So what I found most effective to deal with a nervous system that is in a state of dysregulation and to be able to more effectively manage emotional reactivity is mindfulness practices. Mindfulness is a practice of being able to keep oneself present, keep oneself in a state of balance, even though we are experiencing various triggers within our body. It's a practice of being aware when anger is present, being aware when anxiety is present, depression is present, being aware when sadness is present, but not reacting to it every time. Mindfulness is a practice of being able to be aware of the impulse to become angry, be aware of the impulse to become sad, become aware of the impulse to even go deeply into depression or anxiety, but not allow our nervous systems to go into a state of dysregulation. Through various mindfulness techniques, focusing on your breathing, moving in and out of your nose, becoming aware of sounds, noticing your feet on the ground. By keeping oneself embodied, you see what happens is when we become triggered and we go into a state of emotional reactivity, we end up going up into our heads. We get lost in thought. We exist from here up. And that's when it's very easy for us to become emotionally reactive, when we get sucked in to our negative thought process. So with mindfulness practices, basically what we're doing is we're keeping our awareness grounded and embodied. So we're preventing ourselves from becoming fully identified with thinking, with that the frenetic thought process that's going on when we get triggered. And we're staying focused on breathing, sensations in our body, sounds that we're hearing, our feet touching the ground. We're keeping ourselves embodied. And by doing that, we're able to keep the nervous system from going into a state of dysregulation. That's the practice, at least. And it may sound simple, but it takes quite, it takes some time to be able to learn that skill. It's like learning any skill, swimming, running, playing basketball. It takes practice to learn a new skill. But through mindfulness, I've really been able to regulate my nervous system. I perceive triggers within my own body on a daily basis. I notice anger, I notice anxiety, I notice frustration, I notice various emotional states that I could very easily become reactive to. But through my mindfulness practice, I've developed the ability to let the emotions come and allow them to pass away without reacting to them. And the most effective technique that I found for being able to do that is to be able to keep my attention on this point and just notice my breathing coming in and out through my nose. So that's really all I wanted to say about emotional reactivity today, but it really is something that causes people such a great deal of distress. People are literally out of control. They are a victim of their nervous system. They are a victim of their conditioning, and they don't really have any techniques to take back some control so that they can rewire their programming and find a more effective and healthier way to deal with their triggers, to deal with the programming that we've all had through our experiences, our upbringing, the media, and various other situations. So that's really all I needed to say about that. I will talk more about it at some point in the near future, I'm sure, because it is really the dominant theme in the work that I do. And if you have any questions or complaints or criticisms or comments, feel free to leave them, and if I can find the time, I will be happy to respond. Thank you very much. Take care.